Esoteric Discussions, a show that gives a voice to the hidden and unspoken aspects of our world, tackling topics in the realms of the metaphysical, the esoteric, the political, and social. So now join me, your host, Valentine St. Aubin, as I take you on a journey of exploration. Hello and good evening. Welcome to Esoteric Discussions with me, your host. I am Valentine St. Aubin, and this is a show that explores the deeper issues and questions of life. I'm here every other Wednesday evening. That is on the usual schedule, but as we're on the FM airwaves for these next 4 weeks, I'm going to be with you each Wednesday evening while we do the RSL. So you can tune in from 9 p.m. and you can catch my show. And if you'd like to learn more about what I do, you can listen to or check out my website at valentinesaintaubin.co.uk, where I have a selection of shows that I've done, all of my shows that I've done in the past, all archived for you and ready for you to listen to. And you can also check out the work that I do as well, my writing and all sorts of things that I get up to. So it's the 26th of June 2013, and tonight we're going to be talking about how emotional conflicts trigger disease. I'm going to be joined shortly by my guest, Lauren Delsack, who is an astrologer, and she is coming back on the show again. She was with me a couple of weeks back now, and we were talking about draconic astrology, and tonight we're going to be talking about emotional issues and how that relates with astrological profile, and how science has literally been revolutionized. So there's a lot that has been going on in the world of science and in the world of metaphysics, and they are merging together. So it's going to be a fascinating conversation, because if you have been suffering from any illness, or if you just have an interest in all of the new developments within the scientific realms, you're going to love what we're going to end up talking about tonight. And I think you will find it of great interest. But as I always say, let's set the mood and the energy for tonight, because we have, I love to say it, it's a Mercury retrograde. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's perfectly fine. I am talking about the planet Mercury, who rules communications, and he has decided to go into what we call a retrograde phase, which, well, he appears to be moving backwards. It's just a perception, you see. He's not really moving backwards, but from our observation here on planet Earth, he is moving backwards. And he tends to create all sorts of havoc with communications and electronical devices. There's a few issues going on here in the studio, which I can only surmise it must be Mercury retrograde. And if you're a Wimbledon fan, you will know that today is the weirdest Wimbledon that they have ever had on record. The amount of top seeds that have gone out today is incredible. I'm a big tennis fan myself, so I have been keeping up with the championships, and today has been a very, very strange day. And wouldn't you know it, today is the official day that Mercury has gone retrograde. So there you go, a bit of what's happening up above affecting us below. But we're going to take a quick break, and I'm going to get my guest online and up and going, and we're going to kick this show off. So stay tuned and relax, and I'll be back shortly.
In your home, in your car, and even on your laptop. Tune in to 87.7 FM and online at www.peterborough.fm.
We stress that no medical advice is being provided in this interview, nor the views presented here disqualify the general value of modern medicine.
Welcome back to Esoteric Discussions with me, your host. I am Valentine St. Aubin, and I want to welcome you to another show tonight. We are on the FM broadcast network, I guess we can say that. So if you're driving in your car, you can hear us live and direct. If you're listening via the internet, which is where we usually are, then welcome, and thank you for tuning in as well. And I'm going to open up my mic of my guest tonight. Lauren, are you with me?
Yes, I am.
Hello, and welcome back to the show. Thank you for joining me this wonderful evening.
Happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me back.
Excellent stuff. Well, you know, there's lots to talk about tonight, and we have a wonderful moon in Aquarius, so it's all about evolution and revolution, I think is a nice way to open this up. We're talking about your book that you wrote quite a few years ago now, how emotional issues trigger disease, and it's quite a full subject. So let's kick this off and just maybe start the interview off by just asking you, what was the inspiration that even made you look into this whole area of emotional issues and also astrology as well?
Okay. Well, I ended up doing some research on, well, let me back up. I found out about a very famous spiritual healer in Brazil that people from all over the world were going to with all different diseases and were having, excellent results. Some of them having miraculous healings. And this really inspired me. I was very curious about the subject. So I went there to check it out. And as one thing leads to another, I started to see whether there was any kind of astrological indications when certain people were being cured of cancer and other diseases by this kind of spiritual intervention. Along that path, I happened to meet a gentleman from Switzerland who had a very critical liver condition. Doctors had basically told him that if he, his only recourse was a liver transplant if he was going to live, which led him to seek this type of alternative method for healing himself, because it just didn't click with him that was his only way of survival. He's the one who happened to say to me when I was doing this research on, the other, looking at the spiritual intervention in people's horoscope, he said to me, "Have you ever heard of Dr. Hammer?" And he started to tell me briefly how this doctor in Germany, for many years and many thousands of cases, had discovered that emotional conflicts of a shocking nature were the cause of disease. So to make a long story short, once I found out that there was really nothing in the horoscope that was consistent with everybody who was being healed, meaning that there was not one transit that was happening when people were becoming, were getting these kinds of miraculous healings, I started to investigate Dr. Hammer's work. And it just blew my mind, the logic and the ingenuity of what he was putting out there. And because I was in the right place at the right time, and as a researcher, when you have people from all over the world that have all different kinds of conditions and illnesses, physical or mental, it's just a great study of this. So when I started to apply, well, I could get into all different details here, but that's how that's how I was led down that path. And it's unbelievable how I to this day, I did that research started in 2003. I wrote my book around 2005, published in 2006. Mm-hmm. Until this day, with the hundreds of cases of people that have been diagnosed with critical illnesses that I've worked with Dr. Hammer's theories, I've never come across a case that did not show up exactly as he says. Okay.
Yeah. I found the book quite fascinating. It is a very technical read. It is written from an astrological point of view with many case studies. So for anybody who would like to maybe get their feet wet and try to understand astrology from a case study in a medical point of view, it's an excellent piece of work because the different case studies, and there are numerous with all the different kind of ailments that one can get in life, are quite substantial. And and I found Dr. Hammer, I mean, to be honest with you, and this is why I love having you on my show, because you keep opening me up to all these new horizons, and I hadn't come across his work. And I started doing my own research on him, and he's got such a fascinating story, which we'll get into in just a minute. But I mean, now I can sort of understand why I didn't really know too much about him, because he is kind of like a hidden treasure. And I was just doing research on my own, trying to find out about his work here in the UK to see if there are any practitioners who may follow his teachings and try to apply his technique in their own practice. And there are a few around, but not too many, to be honest.
Well, you have to. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
You have to understand that he has been highly silenced.
Yes.
Okay, so one thing I just want to put out there is, there's an excellent website, which is the official website of his work, which is GermanNewMedicine.com. It's such a thorough website that you can really, you can get a university degree just studying what's on that website. And what I just wanted to say is, I agree with you. I had never heard of him, but then when you find out how he has been, what's the word when people are silenced and
sidelined and
sidelined, everything.
Maybe.
Well, there you go. And then maybe there's something true to this.
Exactly. Well, that's the way. That's what we always understand, isn't it, Lauren? Is whenever it's that great, there is always a cover up. Because it's so. I mean, the potentiality of his work is to explode the medical profession, and I mean, for myself, I'm aware that there are these new revolutions going on in the medical profession. I mean, I have followed a bit of Dr. Bruce Lipton's work, and he does often talk about that, what's going on now. There's a good 10 to 15 years of research in the whole medical and scientific areas of our world, which are quite ahead of its time. And this has been going on, as he says, for a good 10 to 15 years. But you wouldn't know it really on the surface of it, because it's still being drowned by the teachings that they're teaching in school and things like that. They're still teaching these old ways, these old outdated ways of thinking and being, which then dilute these new discoveries and ideas. But I think slowly, with more people coming to the forefront and being and standing their own 2 feet and being very strong in their own will, are trying to get the work across. And I mean, obviously, Dr. Hammer was one of those people, but back in the day, he was one of those pioneers, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So tell us about, what was his story? How did he, because you were saying, we call this the New German Medicine. So,
well, actually, it's German New Medicine.
German New Medicine. So
.com.
Okay. So how did he go on his own tangent and find this new way of understanding about the human body?
Right. Well, he happened to have his own personal experience where his son was shot and killed, his 19-year-old son. And I think that this goes back to, gosh, I don't want to get the year wrong, but this could have happened in the 80s. From that, he came down with testicular cancer, and he survived. And he started putting 2 and 2 together, that the shock of his son's death and his cancer might be related. At the same time, he was working in an oncological cancer center, and he had the perfect opportunity to study patients and also ask them whether they had a traumatic emotional shock prior. Basically, what he discovered was that 1 to 3 years prior to physical symptoms or medical diagnosis is when the emotional conflict occurs. And so through, thousands of cases, he was able to see that this was just on, every case had some kind of emotional conflict. He then that's how he got into it. He then went to study the brain. I mean, the man is a genius. He went to study the brain and discovered that there are these biological programs that are designed within different layers of the brain, and each area of the brain has a relay to a certain organ. And so just like in the animal kingdom, where there are territorial conflicts, we as humans also have territorial conflicts, the different types of conflicts, okay?
Yeah.
So I hope that sort of answered your question. That's how he got onto it.
And he lost, because he himself lost his son, which created this trauma. And as he says, trauma is a big
Well, it's not. Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Can I just clarify one thing that's really important to understand is that, we all have emotional issues, and we're not talking about that. What we're talking about is we're talking about a literal, an emotional conflict that occurs of a shocking nature that literally catches you off guard on, out of the blue, on the wrong foot. And there is no time for the brain to intellectually understand what has happened, okay?
Yes.
So it impacts the brain, literally causing a lesion in the brain. So I just want to clarify that, because also what he discovered is that it's many times the conflict is isolative, meaning that the person has no one to discuss it with, or they're in a situation where they cannot resolve it, okay? They sort of are they're in this isolative position with this conflict. For whatever reason, they cannot discuss it with somebody, or they cannot find a solution or make a choice out of, options in order to resolve the conflict. So there are specific characteristics of what kind of conflict can trigger a disease in the body.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Yes, that does make a big difference as well for people to understand that, because I can hear people thinking, "Oh, well, I've had stress,"
Yes, it's not stress.
Yes, and there are different layers of stress and what have you. But as you say, this is a shocking event. So he was trying to monitor shocking events, and so for himself, his shocking event was the loss of his son, which then had dire consequences. And I understand that his wife also contracted cancer, and she died as well.
That's true. That's from what I understand as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So he found himself in a position where he had cancer, testicular cancer, and his wife had cancer, and then he went on this journey, from what I understand as well, to try to find a bridge to understand the brain. And I mean, and it is a fascinating connection, because it goes against what we have been taught, in understanding in our scientific world, because a lot of people don't really put two and two together. But in the old way of how we've been taught science, like the Newtonian model, we're taught that the body is like a compartment of mechanical parts, and they just function along. Without, they're sort of separate and not too interconnected in any big out of the ordinary way. We're a big functioning symbol of parts, which is devoid of any kind of deep spiritual understanding or any kind of relation of how energy then reacts to the body. But now with this modern approach, which Dr. Hammer obviously was one of the pioneers in this way of thinking and seeing things, from what I can gather from his work, he is seeing that the body is more of a system of energetic influences. So hence you can have this, as you're saying, this big shocking event, and it impacts on us internally in such a deep and bizarre way.
Well, if you don't mind me saying, I have no problem with the word energetic, but what I think is that, we have been trained to believe that we are victims of disease, that this is what we've been taught to believe, right? That as you mentioned, that the body is this mechanical machine that can just break down out of the blue. I won't even go down the path of why medicine works the way it does, conventional medicine, because it's a money-making business. It's in the business sick people. Okay, let's,
It is okay. And that's what people forget, don't they? It's a business model.
The most important thing I think about this is perception, because you see, you and I can both have a shocking event happen to us, okay? But depending on your perception and your way of seeing the world and the way you've been raised and conditioned differently than me, you might take that same event as shocking as where I wouldn't. And so it's a very subjective experience. For example, I can't tell you how many times I've come across somebody that received an insult out of the blue and ended up getting which is a self-devaluation conflict, and ended up getting, a bone cancer, or something that a self-devaluation conflict is related, according to Dr. Hammer, to the bones and the tissues and things like this. Okay, so even an insult that can come completely out of the blue. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, I do.
Now, depending on each person's character and the way they perceive it, I might be the type of person that, I don't allow other people's insults to affect me, as where somebody who is highly sensitive, much more sensitive, that could blow them away,
Yeah.
So when you use the word energetic influences, I definitely believe in energy healing and all this kind of thing. But I think that when we're talking about this, it is such a profound, logical, what he is explaining of how the brain and the psyche and the organs are linked together. Okay, in terms of the different areas of the brain and how it's programmed and all this, it's just it's such a beautiful system. It's incredible, and I only hope that the reason I wrote my book, I don't want to prove anything to anybody. What I want to do is help save lives. I just want people to say, hey, look, here's the research. You make your own conclusions. And you also decide, because you see, medical treatment is such an individual, it's such a personal decision for each person when they are diagnosed with an illness, the path that they're going to take in terms of the treatment. And, I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do. I'm only saying, hey, take a look at this, because it might be something that resonates with you. I'm a very practical, logical thinker, and it's hard for me to believe that anyone could read it and study it and refute it. You understand?
Well, this is what's so fascinating about your book, Lauren, is that when you put it forward in the way that you put it forward, and it's on a very deep level, obviously, because there's you're using Dr. Hammer's theory, plus you're using the astrological world as well to prove it. And once you are aware of what you are reading and looking at, there is no way to refute it. It's just there in your face. But this is where things are breaking down. And we were talking earlier about how Dr. Hammer, for example, and he's not the only one, there have been many others, how he was silenced. I mean, obviously for him, when he started to try to put his theories together and gather his evidence with cancer patients that he was able to speak to and get those stories and things. And when he started to get his case studies together and he presented that to the university or the hospital, wherever he was working, they didn't want to know. No,
they gave him two choices. You shut up or you leave the hospital. And he chose to leave.
Yeah.
And he suffered a self-devaluation conflict because of it. Mm-hmm. Okay? Because that's another shock. Just like when you go to a doctor and you're diagnosed with cancer, that's a shock to your system, depending on your perspective of how you take that information in, which Dr. Hammer proves also initiates other cancers.
And what was his idea about what cancer is? What did he say about that condition in particular? Because he had sort of a different interpretation of what cancer is compared to what we are told by mainstream science.
Well, he calls disease a sound biological special program of nature. He says, for example, let's use an easy situation in the animal kingdom. Imagine, in Africa, in the Serengeti, zebras give birth to a baby zebra, and along comes a lion and kills that mother's baby. She will, and this is according to Dr. Hammer, what he explains, that zebra will begin to take on cancer in her breast, because it is what is, the breast is related to a profound loss within what a woman considers to be her nest, which can be her child, her home, her husband, this kind of thing. So automatically, nature has built in a way for that zebra to resolve the conflict by going into heat again and getting pregnant and giving birth to another child. So I hope I'm answering your question, because
it's great.
Mercury retrograde, and I could be going off here, but
no, it's good. It's good descriptions.
Yeah. Get me back on track. Now that same thing could happen to a mother who, I use this example in the book from Dr. Hammer as well. A child, mother's on the sidewalk and having a conversation with the neighbor, not paying attention to her 3-year-old child, who maybe runs after a ball in the middle of the street, gets hit by a car, boom, goes to the hospital. She doesn't know whether her child's going to live or die. Automatically, her body now has her brain has taken a shock. It has to do with the definition of the conflict. So this relates to a mother with the loss of a child, the potential loss of a child. So automatically the cells are going to start to work to produce more milk to heal the child. Mm-hmm. The body naturally does this. This is a natural process. And in that process, if the conflict goes on for weeks, where the child's laying in the hospital, let's say in a coma, that woman is going to develop a tumor, because there is that much cells being pushed into the area of the breast, okay?
Right.
Now, what Dr. Hammer explains is that once that disease works on 2 phases, conflict active and conflict resolution. So once the doctor tells her your child is fine, she's come out of the coma, whatever, she's going to be fine, automatically the body's going to stop producing the excess milk in order to heal the child. Okay, so the body has the ability to heal itself, resolve the situation itself. So, we're programmed that way. That's the whole point of his work. You know what I mean? Which is beautiful. And so if you understand how nature works and really how we're programmed, oh my God, it's going to open up your mind to all sorts of things. Now, it's very, like I said, I don't try to convince anybody. There are people that have been schooled to believe that you must go to the doctor if you're ill. That's, what can I say?
Well, it's conditioning, and that's what we've been told. Because that's the way that the human race over the last few centuries and things. These people are the experts. These people know how to heal us, because we have lost the knowledge. Because it's us losing the knowledge, isn't it, Lauren? Because back in the day, and we're going back a few hundred years ago now, and in the local villages and worldwide, you had people that understood what plants to use to take, if you weren't feeling well, or, just using the land around them and using the natural remedies for whatever, things to help ease ailments. But then all of a sudden... Go ahead.
No, please, go ahead, continue.
Well, all I was going to say is, all of a sudden, then as we became more enlightened, right, the Enlightenment period and going forward, all those old superstitious ways, being witch doctors, understanding the natural world, natural phenomena, that was frowned upon. So we needed to go to those who had the right learning, who understood the new ways of thinking. So hence we have doctors and things who become experts. So, for the last 200-300 years, it's been implanted into Western mentality, into our psyches, to go to the doctor if you're not feeling well, because they know it all.
Right, yes, and I'd like to make a few comments. I live in a very remote part of a country where there are a lot of indigenous people, and not only indigenous people, but grandmothers that literally everyone goes to the eldest person that lives in our town, because she'll tell you and she'll go with you and pick the plant that is going to help you with the ailment that you have. So it's not, I understand living in a big city, in in a very cosmopolitan, first world place, that, this is harder to come by.
Yes.
So, I think that, you made a couple other, I'm taking notes here so I won't forget my thoughts, but you made a couple comments that it's frowned upon. Well, you and I both know that we've been brainwashed to believe certain things, okay? Because the crux of it is, and I told myself, don't get too controversial in this conversation, because
get controversial,
it's a hot
Lauren.
It's a hot topic. And the thing is that, look, unfortunately, money talks in our world, okay? So systems that are able to make a lot of money by keeping people dumb, ill, taking away people's personal strength. Once you understand that your body is has the ability. There you go, sweetie. And
it is your
that,
temple.
Do you really have to? Yes, and do you have to think about how your heart is able to beat every moment of the day, your lungs are able to breathe, and all these things? I mean, come on, let's give credit, right, for the incredible machinery, or whatever you want to call it, that this soul is running in this body. I mean, it does work perfectly. But again, it's a belief system. And another thing also that's very interesting is that people, some people, disease is comfortable for them. Illness is comfortable for them because maybe they don't have a good sense of self-worth. And so it's, again, that self-defeating way of thinking. Do you understand? Like, if I'm sick, then that proves that I'm not good enough. All these ways of thinking,
That, I think that's actually so deep as well, is that...
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and there are quite a few people who, they want to take the responsibility out of their own hands and give it to somebody else. So yes, they would rather be sick or be in need of that kind of attention than rather do the work that they need to do to heal themselves. And it's, you said at the top of the show, it's all perception. It's a mindset. And I know, and you were saying you don't want to get too controversial, but please get controversial, because it's important that we have these kind of conversations, and we are coming into, everybody has said it in their own way, within the community that we move around in and talk within, that there is this revolution of new ways of thinking and being coming to this planet. So it's important for us, to begin to stop tiptoeing around these topics and just be straightforward about them. It's so important because there are lots of people, as you know, from your own consultancy as an astrologer, and just from my own experience, just moving around, meeting people and things, there are a lot of people who are getting ill at the moment, and they are looking for answers. And as you say, you're not telling anybody what they should be doing, but you're just giving alternatives as to ways that they can approach their own healing and their own sickness and what have you. So, and I think at the end of the day, these types of works like Dr. Hammer, they're so important because, as you say, they can't be refuted. That is proof, because he would do a brain scan. Is that correct as well? And it would show that it would pinpoint the location of whatever it was. And I think that is just so profound,
Yeah, just to mention that what he's able to show is that through a brain scan, he can diagnose somebody and tell them, what illness they may have already had and already cured, what may still be active, because apparently when somebody has this kind of emotional shock conflict occur, then there's going to be a lesion on the brain, on a certain part of the brain that corresponds to a particular organ that looks like rings, as if you had thrown a stone into water. So you get the concentric rings. And then once the person has resolved the conflict and the body is healing itself, then these rings start to dissipate. Okay, So yes,
yeah, I think that's excellent, and that's very much like is it dendrology with when you study trees, because they have the rings
right.
as well.
Good point.
Yeah, and again, this is nature. This is nature speaking to us, but it's us knowing how to read the signs, isn't it?
Well, that's right. And I think that what's happening now, as you were talking about this time that we're coming into and that we're in right now,
Yeah, definitely. We are in it, yes.
I can only tell you that, 10 years ago, I wasn't able to see symbols and nature reflect back to me certain things that I see on a daily basis now. And I really think that's because of, many different variables, but I really do think that we're coming into a time now where things manifest very quickly. You put out a thought, you get back the result very quickly if you're aware of these things. And I've noticed the speed in which this has increased as well. So nature is amazing in terms of being a mirror for us to see things through. Yeah.
Well, Lauren, we're going to take a quick break and do some station identification and give yourself a couple of minutes to catch your breath, okay? And we'll come back on the other side of this and also talk a bit about the astrology as well, because obviously that's a whole nother conversation as well, and we want to make sure we have time to cover those aspects as well, okay? So we're going to take a break and we'll be back shortly.
You're listening to Peterborough FM on 87.7 and online at www.peterborough.fm. One station, many communities.
We stress that no medical advice is being provided in this interview, nor the views presented here disqualify the general value of modern medicine.
Welcome back to Esoteric Discussions with me, your host. I am Valentine St. Alban, and I am here this evening on a Wednesday evening, and my guest with me is Lauren Delsack, who is an astrologer and also an author. Lauren, are you still there?
I am.
Excellent. And yes, you are an author. You've written quite a few books, quite a few astrological books, and as we have been talking, the theme of the show tonight is emotional conflicts and how they trigger dis-ease in the body. And also you approached it from an astrological point of view. And I wanted to ask you about this one, because I'm sure you may have heard about it in the news. And there's so many interesting stories of famous people with illness and things like that. But Angelina Jolie, she did a double mastectomy. Not that long ago, and she's interesting because I had a look at her chart, and she is a Gemini, but she's a Cancer rising, which puts Cancer on the 12th house, in her 12th house, and of course Cancer rules the breasts in astrology, And it's a fascinating. It's quite fascinating to maybe try to get into her psyche to understand why she would have gone to that length to chop off both of her breasts. Considering now what you have introduced with Dr. Hammer's work and his understanding of issues with the breast, or if you get cancer in that area.
Well, number one, I used to, I like studying famous people's horoscopes to pinpoint the conflict and then do research on their lives and say, aha, 2 years ago, boom, that happened. And look, that's exactly what Dr. Hammer says is associated with breast cancer. I haven't done that in her horoscope. Here's the thing. Doctors are considered gods. And so if a doctor tells you, for example, listen, you've got to, we recommend this based on your situation. People, maybe that was her case. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know, why she decided that was the best thing for her. There are other women that do the same thing. There are women that believe that if their mother had breast cancer genetically, they're going to get it themselves. Again, Dr. Bruce Lipton is a great one to study. I was just about to say, because
he brings up that example.
Because we are not prisoners of our genes, okay? We are not victims of our genes. He's proven that genes change based on their environment and what's being fed to them. And so, again, it goes back to our thoughts. Our whole body runs by the machine up here called your brain and the way you think, okay? You did mention a couple things. Yes, in astrology, the moon and the sign of Cancer rule over the breasts. Now, I just want to state so that people don't freak out there that everyone with a Gemini, rising, actually, she would have. If she was Gemini rising, she would have Taurus in the 12.
So she's Cancer rising. She's a Gemini, but she's Cancer rising. Yeah.
Okay. I'm
not sure at what degree, but yeah.
Right. So, I don't want people to freak out like, oh, my sun's in Cancer, my moon's in Cancer.
Exactly.
Or my ascendant's in Cancer, and I'm going to get breast cancer. Because that's not the way it works. You can see in someone's horoscope, let's say, let's put it this way. If you take 2 or 3 of the major configurations in the natal chart, let's say you have an opposition or a square, you have to look at those planets and what sign they're in, and you can look to see what area of the body could be susceptible to weakness or taking on illness. Doesn't mean it would have to happen that way, okay? For example, I have Saturn in Capricorn, which is the final dispositor of my horoscope, but it's not badly aspected, but I've had problems with my knees, my kneecaps, Capricorn, my whole life. So that is a weakness in my body. The point I just wanted to make is that when we're looking at when somebody could be what we would call the early warning signs of critical illness, when we see this 2 or 3 years of very strong astrological indicators, you have to let a client know. It doesn't mean you're going to get sick, okay? But it means that what's going on in your life? Are you sleeping well? Are you eating well? Are you up all night because you have a conflict that hasn't been resolved? You have to be careful during this period because it could cause a breakdown within the body. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And that was actually what really got my attention with some of the case studies. It was the things that they were saying that you had highlighted. If I don't get out of this situation, I'm going to die or I'm going to get sick, right? Yep. And how many times have we said, I know I've said it to myself.
Yep.
Right? I had to completely change my life because I was going to either be literally not here as we speak, or I had to change my whole approach to how I lived because I could feel it. And I always say to people, if I have to go back and sit at a desk in an office environment again, that's the end of me. And it's funny how we just intuitively get to know these things. We reach that point.
Mm-hmm. And we have to be very careful of our wording. I've worked with so many people that unfortunately have also passed away, but many that haven't, that have been diagnosed with cancer. But I just one woman comes to mind, and she said, if we don't make money, or I don't make money because her husband was ill, I'm going to get cancer, and she did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because
it relates to the liver, relates to the perception or having an emotional conflict where you feel that you do not have the means to survive, whether it be monetarily or in terms of food. So, we have to just be so conscious, and it's true. We all fall into this saying, this is going to kill me, or if I do that, I'm going to be dead. We really got to be careful what we say.
Our words are powerful. Yeah.
Absolutely. It is the word,
This is such deep stuff, and this is what we're not being taught. We're not being taught this growing up, learning how to use our minds in a positive way, visualization, positive thinking. This doesn't have to be foo-foo stuff, as people like to say, oh, yeah, but, I'm not really spiritual. It's not about being spiritual. It's just about having a positive attitude, I think, and that's the difficulty, isn't it? It's learning to be positive.
And the difficulty also is this. We're creatures that like to be accepted by other people. And if you think outside of the box from your peers or the group of people that you're around, you're going to be kicked out. Now, that's like a territorial conflict. Imagine an elderly employee that, he knows that these young college graduates are coming in, and he could be kicked out of his territory. He could lose his job.
Yeah.
Okay. Just like when, with let's say horses or stags, and a young stag comes into the territory of these horses, and the old horse that's been the leader of the herd is being kicked out by this young stag. So I mean. Yeah. The thing is that there's this, thing in society, and I just hear it all the time from people, what would other people think if I did that or if I said that? And we've been taught to be so concerned about that, you see. I just happen to be a very out-of-the-box Aquarian, so that never, I always want, if everybody went one way or wore the same color, I was doing the opposite. I never wanted to be, marked in that herd, so people, it is a little bit difficult. And that's why then when people take on a conflict like that, they're afraid to discuss it with somebody, which is the worst case scenario, because that really makes it isolative and even worse on your body.
Well, what do the elders always say to us? You need to let it all out. Isn't that an expression? It's important to let these things out. Don't harbor them inside of yourself to fester and
That's
things
right.
like that. Yeah.
That's right. And there's certain, in astrology, you can, you take, for example, somebody with Mars in Libra. They don't like controversy. They want to avoid controversy at all cost. And so, I guess what I want to say is that they're going to go along with other people, and they're not going to say what they really feel, because what would other people think? And so, anyways, that just came to my mind because I'm thinking of a family member that has a disease that has Mars in Libra, and that was part of the reason why she took on this. She took on MS because she wasn't able to discuss it, and she didn't want to disagree with her husband, and all sorts of things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the famous story of Ray Charles. When he was younger, when he was very young, when he was about 5 or so, and his I think it must have been the older brother, but he died. He drowned, and because Ray Charles was born with sight, he could see, and they were off playing or something like that, and his brother drowned or something like that. I'm not sure how, and his eyesight started to go, and he ended up being blind, and.
Now I'm just looking. Just let me interject something about that case. Beautiful example, because I'm now looking at what Dr. Hammer says can be related to diseases of the eyes, a visual separation conflict, such as having lost sight of someone.
Right. Wow. Isn't that just like right on the money?
Well, that's the thing, is that my God, I just, it's overwhelming, because every single associated conflict with every single organ of the body is so right on, okay?
Yeah.
And you can, if you want to, you don't even have to be an astrologer. Just go and look up famous people that have died of such and such an illness, and go research their life and look back 1 to 3 years from the time that they were diagnosed with illness. Now, the thing I want to just say here is that you take somebody like Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't publicly come out with pancreatic cancer and announce it to the world for many years afterwards. So you really have to do your research well, because he was diagnosed back in 2004. And if you look at what was going on in his life 2 years before, he was there was something going on with stocks and investments, and he was being accused of cheating in that area. I mean, you can find this on Wikipedia. It's not like surgery here.
It's not secret.
Okay. And anyway, so it's just fascinating, and it'll just prove itself over and over and over again to you. And I did put in my book some famous cases of Peter Jennings, who was
that one was interesting. Yes.
Yeah, and Carlos Castaneda, and some other ones. And anyways, and the thing that I tried to put in the book is I tried to give you the word for word corroboration of the person that was diagnosed with the disease, what they said happened. And another important thing I want to bring up, when I was working with these people for the book, and I would say, well, let me ask you a question. I'd look at the astrology, I'd go back, I could pinpoint it back 2 years. Can I talk to you about, let's say April of 2012, and I knew the associated conflict with what that person had. I said, did something happen in April of 2012, right around that time with, this subject. And they would say, I can't believe it. I always knew that had something to do with my disease. So 99% of the time, I'm only just sort of triggering what they already knew instinctively had something to do with their illness.
Yeah,
you see?
That I like that as well. And well, because it's, I'm going a bit off topic here, but I love this stuff. But because it's Wimbledon time and I'm a big tennis fan.
Me too.
Yeah, okay. Well, just like looking at this research that you've, introduced me to, which is just, I love this and I'm going to really look into this a lot deeper. But Serena Williams, now she was ill she was on her deathbed a couple of years ago. And there was a documentary, probably only aired here in the UK over the weekend. And it had her and Venus. Venus is also ill at the moment as well. She's been suffering with illness, battling for quite some time now. But Serena, she had those blood clots on her lungs, right? In the documentary, there's a scene where she's on her running machine and she's talking with one of her, the hitting partner that she uses. And she says, she was really angry about something. She was saying, you know what, I need to get better, because this was when she was rehabilitating herself, trying to come back right before she started winning everything again. She said, these girls are trying to kill me. She said that.
Well, you want to hear something?
In the documentary. And she was on her deathbed, wasn't she? Yeah.
Well, I'm just looking again here. Okay, let's go to the bronchial and respiratory tracts in the lung. Territorial conflict, feeling threatened, smelling threats, fear of losing the territory or the actual loss. So if you're a competitive tennis player and you want to win that title or you don't want it taken away from you.
Wow. Oh, it's just so amazing, isn't it?
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
This is not deep brain surgery. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What I'm trying to get across is this is very logical stuff that even a child could understand.
Yeah. Well, I guess this is why Dr. Hammer had to be silenced, because it's too powerful. It's too powerful of information for people to be... It's a threat, isn't it? It's a threat to the institutions. It's a
Valentine.
Yeah.
Just imagine this. If people understood the way the body really works and how these conflicts cause illness and how they resolve themselves, would they need to go to the hospital? Would they need chemotherapy? Would they need radiation? Would they need drugs? No, that will wipe out a whole industry and way of thinking. Can't be done. Not until, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Of course, you're going to have people that say that there's no way that you can get rid of cancer without those things. And that's the challenge of trying to show alternative ways, isn't it?
Well, if you do research and you find out what chemotherapy does to every cell in the body, and again, you can find this on Dr. Hammer's website and you can find it on other websites, There's a lot of good doctors out there also that are coming out with truth as well. But, again, they have a choice of keeping their job or losing their job. So, that's why these kinds of discussions, I think slowly but surely this is going to come out more and more and more. But people don't want to lose their jobs and people don't want to lose their livelihood. It's a very touchy thing. The most important thing that I just want to get out to people is that if you're diagnosed with illness or you have an illness and this resonates with you, go read about it, go find out about it, and let yourself tell you what's right for you.
And you can also visit an astrologer as well, like yourself, can't you? I had to say that one. But that can be useful as well, can't it? Because you can sort of look at the chart and see what. People will come to you usually when there is a lot going on. Obviously, that's pretty true of an astrological consultation, isn't it? There's always lots of things going on, which is why they would come to you in the first place. But maybe going to someone like yourself can help to maybe give some different perspectives. It's just an idea anyway, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I have been doing this for a long time, and I do get people diagnosed with illness that. My job is not to tell them what they should do. My job is to say, hey, look, let me study your horoscope. By the way, let me pinpoint when an emotional conflict that could have triggered your disease occurred. Now, how is it possible I can know that? I can only know it because I study astrology. I use Dr. Hammer's theories. I apply the two things together, and bingo, bango, there you have it, Mm-hmm. And the person says, oh, my God. I knew that was related to my illness. So what can I say,
Well, this has been another. I love these chats that we had, Lauren.
Yeah, it's great for me as well.
Oh, it's just fantastic to be sharing this kind of information with people. And we're, we've come to the end of another show. It goes so quickly. It always goes.
It really does.
I do this show on Peterborough FM. It's not mainstream. The show that I do, it is a bit different from the norm. But I'm sure hopefully those who would have been listening tonight or listening on the archives will definitely gain some new insights into things. So give us your website, Lauren.
Sure. It's Lauren Delsack, LaurenDelsack.com. And thank you, too.
Thank you as well. And I'm going to have you back another time for us to talk about something else, because there's so much more to
Pleasure.
discuss. Yeah, definitely. But
okay.
Thank you for being with me, and I'm going to close your mic. And
all right.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you as well.
And that's it, guys. Another show, and I hope you enjoyed that. So if you liked what you heard, please do your research. Look into this Dr. I've been saying Hammer, but I think it might be Hamer, Hamer. Fascinating work, and also look into Dr. Bruce Lipton as well. He's been He's really doing a lot of work trying to change people's ideas and perceptions about science and medicine. There are a lot of new innovations going on, so just go out and read and learn. That's all you can do. That'll make me proud. But that's another show, and I want to say thank you for listening. And like I always say, until next time, keep your eyes on the stars.
Peterborough FM, one station, many communities.